Hello everybody, here we are today doing a Stanley Cup final preview, of course, between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. Now before we start with the storylines and all those things, we do have to talk about how exactly we got here. We got here with the Edmonton Oilers beating the Los Angeles Kings in 5 games in the first round, the Vancouver Canucks in 7 games in the second round, and then the Dallas Stars in 6 games in the Western Conference final. As for the Florida Panthers, they ended up beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games in the first round, the Boston Bruins in 6 games in the second round, and then the New York Rangers in 6 games in the Eastern Conference final. And now we get to talk about some storylines for this series. The first one is, can Edmonton's penalty kill continue to be stingy? So during the course of the regular season, the PK for Edmonton was 15th in the league for PK percentage. However, things have gone really well for them in the playoffs as it is best in that time. They have successfully killed off all penalties against LA in the first round, 20 of 23 against Vancouver, and then all against the Dallas Stars. So you have 2 series where they're able to not allow a goal. Well, they had guys in the box. That is huge, and the numbers have been really good in that time. And one of the things that really sticks out here is you're seeing a lot of guys thriving here. Most of their Matthiases are having a good series. Matthias Ekholm and then Matthias Janmark. Janmark has a short-handed goal in this, to where a lot of people talked about, especially in the final game of that series against Dallas, how they had a better goal differential on the PK than Dallas did for the entirety of that series. And of course, there's a lot of talk too, as they have successfully killed off 28 penalties in a row now and have not allowed a goal on the PK since May 12th. So it's been a minute since this has all gone down. And Stuart Skinner, while a lot of people talk about what his save percentage is during the playoffs so far, he has the best PK save percentage in the playoffs for goalies that have played at least 5 games, which is actually 15 goalies. So, things have gone well for him, at least in this regard, when there are guys in the box, which is kind of important because you don't want things to get away from you. And when you have a goalie that's had some shaky play, having him stand up here in this moment is a good thing. Now, I will say they will have a Florida Panthers team that is going to be much more difficult to face off against than maybe some other matchups they could have had. The Panthers had a top 10 power play unit during the course of the regular season, and during the playoffs, I believe they've had 9 games where they've scored at least 1 power play goal, and they've had 3 games where they've scored multiple power play goals. One thing that's going to be a very interesting matchup here is how you're going to see the Oilers be able to protect inner slot shots, as they didn't really allow a lot of those, especially towards the second half of the series against the Dallas Stars, whereas Florida is a team that does really well at getting those really juicy opportunities down low. Sam Reinhart had a ton of power play goals in the postseason, or regular season I should say, but he also has the team lead in the playoffs, but he is tied with Carter Verhaeghe. He will certainly be a guy to watch out for, as again, a lot of people are talking about the fact that he could be playing his final games as a Florida Panther. So I guess my take is that I do think Florida should be able to get more shots on the power play than Dallas did, probably just in general as well too. So the question then becomes, will the Oilers PK that has been so good for them now, will it continue to thrive and possibly even break the record for most successful penalties killed off during the playoffs? Or will we see it give a little bit in the biggest stage in hockey? Now, the second talking point is whether or not Gustav Forsling will be the X factor for the Florida Panthers in this series. You know, why a series everybody, including myself, talked about whether or not Chris Tanev would be that guy. And this is interesting, of course, with Forsling because he had the league's best plus-minus this season while averaging about half a point per game. Big deal. And in the playoffs as well, he's had tough matchups. This is kind of one of those situations where you knew Forsling's name before, but I think this year especially people are hearing it even more. And in the postseason, he has had matchups where in the first round he ended up playing against Nikita Kucherov. Things weren't perfect, but they weren't terrible in terms of the goals for percentage. Then in the second round, he played David Pastrnak, kind of the same situation. I think he actually ended up outscoring Pastrnak when he's out there on the ice. And then in the second round, Eastern Conference final, again, another big name, Mika Zibanejad, and a similar situation. And you're seeing multiple things go on here where you see value in a guy that maybe not always is going to be the guy that gets the zone exits, but is going to be good at zone entry denial percentage, and is also going to be somebody that spends all the time on the PK. Both of those things are really important because you have a team in Edmonton that is dangerous off the rush, that can score a lot of goals, and I will be very curious to see how he deals with some of the names like Zach Hyman and Leon Draisaitl, because we all know those are the primary goal scorers right now. Connor McDavid is a very dangerous player, but if we're talking just goal scoring at the moment, he's not been super dangerous, as he has just 5 goals in the playoffs to this point. And then you got to factor in that he's played over 23 minutes a night and has 11 points in 17 playoff games. This is somebody that probably won't go on to win the Conn Smythe if Florida ends up winning. However, he is certainly going to be a name that you talk about during the run of the playoffs You know, when you form a team, you are going to want the superstar winger that gets 120, 130 points, and that's understandable. But you need to have guys that are going to be capable of shutting down the star opposition. And I know Barkov, of course, won the Selke this year, and you have, of course, other names on this roster too. But if you had Forsling go out there and have a series where you had 3 points and helped shut down the Stars for Edmonton, that is a really good effort. Again, you're not going to go out there and hand him the Conn Smythe probably, but this is how teams win championships, having players that are able to have good defensive numbers and be able to get them, again, where they want to be, where Florida is now for the second straight year. Stanley Cup final, and now it's all about winning it. And then the third and final talking point is what's under the hood for goalie stats. Now, if you were somebody that paid attention to the league, but for whatever reason you weren't paying too much attention during the playoffs, you'd probably be looking at Sergei Bobrovsky and Stuart Skinner's goals against average and saying, wow, that's actually not that bad, as you have 2.20 for Sergei Bobrovsky and a 2.5 goals against average for Stuart Skinner. Again, those are numbers that are not going to be, where you're having a team just bury you early and often all the time, but you're looking at the save percentage for both of them. It is below 910 for both, and for Stuart Skinner's is actually below 900 as it sits at 897. Now, I will say for Stuart, he is a goalie that has had games where he's had 25 shots or less on multiple occasions. In the Vancouver series, they had multiple times where they had 20 shots or less in that. So having your save percentage be lower is not necessarily uncommon, especially if you allow 2 goals in that time. Yeah, your save percentage may not look that pretty, but he's also had some games that have looked bad for him. Now, I will say, since he's been benched, he's gone 6-2 in that time and has a save percentage of 920. Only had one bad game in that span, so things have started to get better for him despite his overall stats looking ugly. But yeah, there's been some games where they are not good. And then you have Sergei Bobrovsky. He's had 10 games where he's allowed 2 goals or less, and his numbers, of course, look a little bit better than Stuart's, but also, too, he's not facing a lot of chances against. And I gotta say, with this series, though, we know there's a lot of guys that can go out there and score a lot of goals, and you are going to see potentially bad play in net. But I also think, too, if you had to go with somebody, you're probably saying that Sergei Bobrovsky might be in a better spot. But I got to give credit to Stuart Skinner as well, because in Game 6 against the Dallas Stars, he faced a lot of shots and was a huge reason why they ended up winning that game. Yes, the PK has been good for them during the playoffs. He's part of that, though, again, too, because he could just go out there and allow 3 or 4 goals in that span. PK may not look as good, but yeah, I'm looking at this situation, seeing 2 goalies where their numbers are good in some regards, bad in other regards, but who knows, maybe we'll see a series where both teams are getting 25 shots or less. I'm hoping that it's more eventful in that time, but you could see, especially both of these, maybe potentially get benched in the series. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping they're able to have a good playoff stretch during this final run, and I think that with what we've seen recently, hopefully that's the case. So overall, we are seeing a Stanley Cup final matchup that is going to be very fun, because 10 years ago, this would have been practically laughable. Around 2013, 2014, you would have not thought this was going to be a Stanley Cup final matchup. And in fact, this is the first time that these two teams have met in the playoffs. This is going to be fun. I'm hoping that it can be really heated, but I am also aware this is centered so much around Connor McDavid and a legacy-boosting, legacy-defining moment if he ends up winning the Stanley Cup. But again, like we've talked about during the playoffs, there are other teams that have other storylines there. Barkov is a player that has won the Selke. He's been with Florida for over 10 years. They've had a lot of success in recent years. Big boost there. Paul Maurice, of course, winning the Cup would be a big deal. Sergei Bobrovsky, along with a whole bunch of other players and names for Florida, would be huge. And I think that a big storyline here as well is the fact that you have a Canadian team versus an American team. I'm hoping that we get a good series with not a lot of controversial calls that end up going the distance. So now I get to pick whom I have winning the series. And for this series, I'll be picking the Florida Panthers in 7 games. This is one where I wasn't exactly sure what I felt like going into it, and I still really don't feel confident about it. I think as you go further in the playoffs, especially when you have 2 teams that were able to have good years, you feel a little bit shaky about your pick, and this one is, again, something that I feel a little bit shaky about. Now, my mindset is you have a team in Florida that could get multiple power play goals and make the PK break or bend a little bit for the Oilers. It's kind of where I'm taking this, and I do think the Stars are a team that isn't the same as Florida, where Florida can play with a little bit more physicality and is going to probably be able to get more shots. I would see a world where Stuart Skinner probably has a poor series, or at least has some games where things don't go very well for him. And I think that's where I'm more leaning Florida. But with Edmonton, we know that they have so many players that can go out there and make the difference. Again, Hyman and Draisaitl have been going on a run as of late. And if Connor McDavid really wants a legacy-defining moment, he's going to go out there and maybe score, 6 or 7 goals in the series himself. he could have multiple great goals in this series. Sergei Bobrovsky could look foolish, and I do think in between the pipes is really going to be what defines this series. Is if Bobrovsky struggles, I see a world where, again, Edmonton wins, and I'm not exactly sure how this will go. But yeah, Florida in 7 is my pick, and I'm hoping for a good one. If not, obviously, you have the Oilers winning the Cup. I really don't mind whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year. If Florida wins it, obviously their first championship. If Edmonton wins it, you know, the first time that they've been able to go out there and win it since 1990. So anyway, those are my thoughts for this series. I do apologize if I've had a weird moment during this video. I seem to have tweaked my back somehow along the way the night before, and I don't know what's going on. So anyway, sitting in the chair even hurts. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this series? Who do you think will win and how many games? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night, and you all hockey alright. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.